I think the interesting thing is how you increasingly find that inner sense of self and your own direction, that that alignment, that feeling that this is my path, I'm going the right way, because that's what causes so much hurt, inner hurt to people. It actually causes the devastation of depression and all the other really difficult emotions, is feeling that you're off track, or knowing that you're off track and not knowing how to find that track again. And of course, it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time for us to find our track. It takes time for us to connect, to really know that inner orientation that helps you to make a decision, that helps to bring you even the decisions to make. And this is the very interesting contrast for me. So we have the world of energy, and then you'll notice that I also talk about the light, and they have a very interesting relationship with each other. The more you connect with energy, the more you connect with the world of infinite possibility. And I remember some years after I started learning about energy, going through a period of what felt like to me enormous creativity, endless ideas. I could have created a new business every single day of my life, virtually. And I know many other people who've been through the same thing. But I didn't create very much with that, because it was creativity of ideas, but it was not actually creativity of creating. And this is something that we're quite confused about, I think, in our culture, because we often think that creativity is having ideas. But actually, ideas don't create anything. Ideas are freely available. They are showered down on us in the form of energy all the time. If you're a little bit open to energy, you will have ideas all the time. And the interesting thing that I learn is that the energy produces, it's almost like it produces the ideas. And so many people will be picking up the same ideas at the same time across the world, because those ideas are kind of codings that are in the energy that are what are evolving at the moment. And that's why you see trends happening across the planet. It's why you see scientists apparently discovering the same thing in completely unrelated labs with absolutely no idea that they are all thinking about the same thing. So the energy supplies the possibilities, probably, I suspect, in many ways as a response to what we're looking for. So we look at our world and say, oh, I don't like this, I want that. We create a demand. So we start to receive the ideas of how to do that, how to experience that which we're asking for. If a lot of us are asking for the same things, then we get there's a more common supply of that kind of idea. But the interesting thing is we pick up the ideas absolutely uniquely. We may all pick up many of us may pick up the same idea, but that idea will be uniquely expressed in your life. Now, most ideas are rejected or not followed through on or abandoned, and so they don't go very far. But if different people pick up the same idea and follow it through, what will come out at the end is a whole range of different, let's call it products, that's a very business language, creations, happenings, because each one has expressed them through their own unique perspective and orientation in life. And I saw that happen when I got the idea, so to speak, of which it didn't come as an idea, but the experience of writing the book about money. There were several other books that were written almost at exactly the same time. One of them, that comes to mind, I think Roger Hamilton's book about the Millionaire Mastermind. I think that was very, very similar timing that it was being written. And there were several others. And I reflected then on how all of us had received that same message, that same, it's not so much an idea, I would say message, energy coded message, but we each created something very different from it. And that's why it's so important to be able to orientate towards your own unique path rather than being constantly influenced by everybody else, so that you lose that footing on your path and start trying to walk somebody else's path. And unfortunately, of course, we've been educated on the whole to walk other people's paths. And our entire corporate system relies on people walking other people's paths, not walking their own path. And many different aspects of our society appear to be much easier to navigate if you're walking probably a whole mix of people's paths, but they're not that easy to navigate because you lose your own path. And so you lose your sense of self. And then ultimately, you don't quite know which way to walk. And so you're casting around in every direction for ideas, for action, for what to do next, because you don't have that inner sense of who you are. So that's the energy part. The energy provides the messages. And once you've taken an idea or a message and decided, yes, I'm going to run with this one, I'm going to bring this into action, the energy supplies the messages of all the further steps. They are kind of coded in the energy. So you say, oh, I really want to, I don't know. Yeah, funny example that happened to me yesterday. Nico and I have been talking recently about getting another car because we started to have the feeling that maybe our car was not going to last forever. It's doing very well so far, but we just started to talk about it. And yesterday evening, I was at an event, a networking event, and the speaker talked about chatting with people in Uber cars, like having the courage to have an interesting conversation with the driver rather than either just sitting there in the back, you know, doing your thing, or talking about the weather and the traffic and the how long have you been on your shift so far and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to ask the guy what he does. He started telling me that he gets cars for small businesses. And so we had an interesting chat. And then I said, oh, I just want to ask you a question. I just wanted to ask him where he thought were really good cars to get in our price range. And then he just sort of started telling me. And then I realized, I said, oh, do you do that? Do you get secondhand cars? Because he was telling me that I could get something much better than what I'd seen on car sales for the price that I was talking about. And I said, is that something you could do for me? And he said, yes, of course it is. And, you know, I was listening to this guy who's so honest and so clever in the way that he works. And it was just like the energy. So we got this idea about getting a new car. The energy supplies this guy who says, go and talk to the Uber driver. You go talk to your Uber driver. So I say, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have an interesting conversation with the Uber driver. And then it turns out that he could really easily find a car for us. We would end up paying less for it than we would if we did it ourselves. And it's not in his interest to screw us in any way, because he works with all these dealers. And if he loses his relationship with anybody, he's going to lose all his business. So there's a win-win-win kind of arrangement there. And I'm thinking, well, it was just like, well, thank you. That was very nice. I felt very rewarded. But that's an example which we all understand. We have these things happening all the time. I just want you to understand that that's the bit that the energy does. So the more you are open and receptive to energy, the more you have that experience. It's actually happening all the time. It's just that we don't really realize that the energy is literally supplying you with all the happenings that align with what it is that you are asking for, what you are looking to experience in your life. And therefore, being receptive at an energetic level is really important. Some of it will show up internally as internal states. Some of it will show up externally. Some of it will show up, a lot of it will show up as the thought first and the happening later. So first of all, we had the thought about secondhand car, getting another car. And then we talk about it and look at some cars and, didn't do that much. And then happenings start to happen a little bit later. All of that is the energy in action. And when you can see the energy that's going on behind, you have a system. You can get an understanding, a deeper connection with life, which makes it all work much better. It is actually working really well when horrible things are happening, but it doesn't feel like it's working well for us. Life is actually working really well still. Usually there's horrible stuff going on inside ourselves that invites horrible things to happen or things to feel horrible. And we're not really seeing what's going on. We don't have that consciousness. So there's a lot to learn about how to deal with the energy that is arriving in your life. And the more conscious you become, the easier and smoother and more fluid that becomes. But the point about the light is that it gives you the orientation with the energy. The light, that connecting with the light, which is so intangible, genuinely untouchable, really, except that it's what you are, so it's completely touched all the time. It's indescribable, and yet you're experiencing it all the time. But when you remember it, when you connect with it, when you just open your heart to it, when you remind yourself that that's what you are, when you in any way have a thought that passes through your mind about the light, that's what it takes to connect with it. It does something inside you that draws you towards your natural path and your natural direction. It does that in a way that I cannot possibly describe. I can only say that I know that happens. I know that from experience. I know that from working with other people. I know that you can feel the energy. The energy is much more tangible in a way, especially as you become more sensitive to it. But the light operates on a whole different system. The energy is connected with the light. It's an expression of the light. But the light itself, of course, it is the energy, it is me, it is you, but there's a principle within there that orientates, and I have found it made the most enormous difference to me, because before there was just so much energy around, but I couldn't find that inner sense of direction. And I found that the more that I've explored and experienced the light and then brought that together with energy, that when the two systems are working together with you, with me actually showing up for it, then that's when things feel different and work differently.